Hello, dear friends. The last 2 years have been like a marathon obstacle course for most of us, an ongoing challenge of pushing through drastic changes, deep losses, and dealing with old unresolved traumas. All this, along with dealing with fear about events occurring in the world, because of the frequencies flowing into the earth, the old ego is dying, and yet it is putting up a fight, fearfully holding on and struggling to maintain itself, according to Vidya Fraser. Opinion piece: Fire and ice, snakes on the plane, risk of stagflation, between a rock and a hard place, the impact of war shock, World Bank talks recession. Let's start. Morgan Stanley says markets should prepare for fire and ice as the massive paradigm shift begins. According to Morgan Stanley's co-chairman, investors should prepare for continued turmoil in global markets as the era of low interest rates and cheap debt comes to a halt. Ted Pick, head of institutional equities at the investment bank, warned that the stock market could experience continued bouts of volatility as the economy is dominated by two threats: fears about red-hot inflation and an impending recession, which he called fire and ice, respectively. End quotes. We'll have these periods where the situation is terribly fiery, and other periods where it is icy, and clients need to navigate around that, Pick said. Fears are growing on Wall Street that the Fed could trigger a recession with its war on inflation, which rose 8.3% in April, near a 40-year high. Other companies forecasting a recession in the next 2 years include Bank of America, Fannie Mae, and Deutsche Bank. Metaphor: Iceland is a land of fire and ice, but the metaphor of fire and ice is generally used when one has conflicting feelings, when making a decision and one's thoughts swing from one extreme to the other like a pendulum. When one weighs the pros and cons and swings to one extreme as well as at the other. It's the contradiction between passion and cold reason, or being with mixed feelings because reason moves to be cold, and passion says the opposite. To be between a rock and a hard place is to have no choice anymore. Fire and Ice is one of Robert Frost's best-known poems. It was published in December 1920 in Harper's Magazine, and in 1923 in his Pulitzer Prize-winning New Hampshire. It discusses the end of the world, comparing the elemental force of fire to desire and ice to hate. This is the poem. Some say the world will end in fire. Some say in ice. From what I have tasted of desire, I hold with those who favor fire. But if it had to perish twice, I think I would enough of hate to say that for destruction ice is also great, and would suffice. Rena's War. War shock threatens to have a lasting impact on the global economy. The world economy will pay a heavy price for the war, including weaker growth, higher inflation, and potentially lasting damage to supply chains, according to the OECD. The organization cut its global growth outlook for this year to 3% from the 4.5% it forecast in December, and doubled its inflation projection to almost 9% for its 38 member countries, according to forecasts released in Paris on Wednesday. In 2023, it expects growth to slow to 2.8%. Meanwhile, policymakers must mitigate the other threats to development around the world: rising food and energy prices, stagflationary pressures, increasingly dangerous debt overhangs, rising inequality and instability. Slowdown. Most of the world's economies are slowing down, except for oil producers. The World Bank says most countries are heading for recession and warns of a possible return to the stagflation of the 70s. Investors, bankers, and businessmen have been talking for months about the possibilities of a coming recession. Now, the world's leading international lender is joining to the chorus that a recession is likely, and warning that something even worse could be on the horizon. Global economic growth is expected to slow before the end of the year, and most countries should start preparing for a recession. The word recession may conjure up frightening images of the market crash of 2008, but most economists believe that if there is a recession, a downturn of that magnitude is unlikely, and most say that the outcome is likely to be a mild recession, as is normal at the end of business cycles. But this end is not as normal as it seems. But the World Bank warns that even a mild recession could have lasting consequences for the global economy, as the combination of current economic forces could lead to stagflation, a mix of low growth and high prices that is toxic for developing country economies. If interest rates rise too high, it could be inevitable the economy could fall into contraction and recession. Resumption of normal supply chain operations and increased production worldwide are essential to avoid stagflation, but it will not be easy. The closure of Chinese production sites in recent months have dealt a blow to global manufacturing, and war-related energy constraints are preventing supply chains from returning to normal. Snakes on the plane. The market of pet travel and transfers seem to have gained global interest, according to the Wall Street Journal. Several travel companies are responding to the trend, which has seen more and more people travel with their pets, having bonded with them at home during confinement. And Deutsche Bank's exodus of staff from Russia runs into unexpected problems with animals. Deutsche Bank has run into unexpected obstacles in its effort to move its workers out of Russia. The German lender has moved hundreds of software developers and their families from Russia to Berlin in the past 3 months, the Financial Times reported on Monday. Following the war in Ukraine in late February, Deutsche Bank offered all its staff in the country the opportunity to relocate to Germany. About half of its Russian staff reportedly accepted the relocation offer, and most of those who accepted the offer have already moved. Deutsche Bank is relocating about 2,000 people from Russia to Germany. Short news. Economy. The stock market fell on Wednesday as Amazon and chip makers fell. The stock market's fall is worse than it looks. Most of the world's economies are slowing except for oil producers. Morgan Stanley says markets must prepare for fire and ice as massive paradigm shift begins. A leading economist, Mohamed El-Riam, says the market rally is not a buy signal as stagflation looms. In quotes, I would take some chips off the table. Bitcoin and Ethereum rise, but Dogecoin trades in the red. Supply crisis. Gasoline prices rise again to record highs, but refineries, not oil prices, are the driver. Oil needs to hit $135 a barrel to rebalance the market, says Goldman. Oil prices could reach $150 a barrel or more, with demand likely to be destroyed by the end of the year, according to global commodities trader Trafigura. Goldman Sachs says oil will rise sharply and consumers will feel that crude is $160 a barrel because of rising gasoline prices. Oil prices are nowhere near their peak as Chinese demand has not yet fully recovered, says OPC's largest member. Lumber prices halve as housing markets fall. Mortgage activity hits 22-year low as rising rates hit housing markets. Lavrov visits Turkey on a mission to open up the Black Sea for grain exports. Turkey strives to pressure Russia and Ukraine to reach a grain deal to avert a food crisis. The West must act quickly to address the food crisis and Moscow's blame game. USA. Inflation soared 8.3% in April and is approaching 40-year highs. Yellen says the level of inflation in the US is unacceptable. Treasury officially called China a currency manipulator. Citizens have not felt so pessimistic since the Great Recession. New York moves to legalize the conversion of dead bodies into fertilizer. Elon Musk's Twitter deal draws investor lawsuit over spam account claims. 2-year-old boy accidentally kills his father with a gun. Incredible. A strong rebuke to police from teacher who watched his 11 students die in Texas school attack. Europe deflates on the prospect of rate hikes. Russian securities frozen in the European Union exceed $85 billion. ECB ends debt purchases and will start raising rates. Europe had 8 years of negative interest rates and negligible growth. Now it is forced to raise rates and still no growth. The Eurozone economy grew more than estimated at the beginning of the year. The Euribor continues to soar and is approaching 0.6%, new highs since 2014. Mysterious person throws money from the balcony of a German shopping center. Berlin approves extending the operation of coal-fired power plants on the standby due to possible gas shortages, while Spain shuts them down. Germany doesn't want to be too successful in replacing Russian natural gas because it wants to move away from this fuel in the long term, according to the economy minister. European Union decarbonization gets stuck in the European Parliament. European lawmakers support a ban on new fossil fuel cars from 2035. The Lithuanian president strongly opposes the transport of Ukrainian grain through Belarus. The State Duma of the Russian Federation suggests cancelling Lithuania's independence. The European Union tests its cybersecurity systems. The front pages in the UK show no mercy for Boris Johnson and write him off. Caribbean countries want Elizabeth II to step down as head of state. Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, Bahamas, Belize, Grenada, Jamaica, and St. Kitts and Nevis. Turkey tells Russia it will respond to the stabilizing moves in northern Syria. Merkel warns on Russia's isolation after Putin's big mistake in quotes. Spain. The first heat wave arrives in Spain with highs of up to 40 degrees Celsius. Brussels approves the Iberian proposal to limit the price of gas. Siemens Gamesa says investing in green hydrogen would stabilize prices. Repsol maintains its strength with 24% potential and is worth 7.6 billion more. Spain among the European countries with the most irregularities in European funds. Passive pimping fine clients and punish owners of premises to abolish prostitution in Spain. Algeria suspends cooperation treaty with Spain over Western Sahara dispute. The existence of a 4,000-year-old necropolis at Cape Trafalgar is confirmed. Americas. Dominican Republic. Environment Minister is shot dead in his office. Oil majors line up for the next big South American oil boom. Joe Biden to open the 9th Summit of the Americas amid controversy. Bolsonaro casts doubt on Biden's victory ahead of meeting. The Colombian president takes the migration experience to the Summit of the Americas. An unprecedented caravan of 50,000 migrants leaves southern Mexico for the US. In quotes, the border is closed. Don't risk it. US warning to the largest migrant caravan ever seen. López Obrador justifies military deployment in the face of the advance of the migrant caravan. Cuba accuses the US of encouraging irregular migration of its citizens. Díaz-Canel criticizes the US and the Summit of the Americas. Venezuela and Turkey sign 3 very important agreements. Maduro offers Erdogan to turn Venezuela into a port for Latin America. Some legislators abstained from voting on the law regulating the use of force in Ecuador. Russia is working on alternative financial mechanisms for Latin American countries. Chile's CPI continues to rise with figures not seen in 30 years. The central bank predicts that Chile will enter recession in 2023. A court rules in favor of a Mapuche leader for torture during the dictatorship. Fertilizers piling up in Brazilian ports are a sign of a further fall in prices. And that's all for today. Thanks a lot, dear friends.